So, first, I want to say thanks for coming on and doing this with us. This is a follow up to your mom's interview, and I'm glad that we got to interview you both separately. I think originally we were thinking about trying to get you both together. I'm glad that we're doing it separate because I think it's two different things. Your mom's coming at it from the perspective of a parent, and you're coming at it as you live it, walk it, breathe it every day. So there is no better resource than you are with some of the things that we're going to be talking about. So the title of this is What I Wish You Knew About Being Transgender, whereas your mom's was What I Wish You Knew About Parenting a Transgender. So I think probably a good place to start, since you have walked this and lived this, is talk about what you think or what do you know are some of the biggest myths surrounding transgender. And is that even the proper
Yeah, we're
terminology?
using.
Are we even saying that right to say transgender? I mean, is that right? Is that what we're going by?
Yeah. So, um, most of the people who are trans will typically just say trans.
Okay.
If you're talking about a trans person or a transgender person, that's typically what is accepted nowadays. You could also say a transgendered person, but that's kind of outdated, so to speak. Um, and I guess I would say some of the most common myths for people who are transgender is, uh, the classic doing it for attention. Most people are doing it to, feel better about their bodies or feel, kind of shift their body or their identity closer to what fits for them or what's right for them. Um, Another one is, uh, I know that there are a lot of jokes from my age group about using the proper pronouns, and it's just kind of funny to me because everyone has pronouns, regardless of whether or not you call them preferred pronouns. They are your preferred pronouns because you know if you were raised male and you identify as male, you'd be kind of offended if someone started using she and her pronouns to refer to you. So I think it's just important to note that everyone has preferred pronouns. You're not making a funny joke when you make a joke about someone's pronouns. I don't see a lot of trans people joining the military for any medical benefits. uh, they might. I don't know. I don't know. It's a long and difficult process, both to socially transition, to medically transition. Um, and so, you know, this is someone's life that you're talking about. I don't know, acknowledge that they're going through a difficult journey and they're not doing it for the hell of it. Pardon my French.
Especially after interviewing your mom. I guess even a little bit before interviewing your mom. So I mean, I'll be completely honest with you. I'm of a generation that this is a subject that is confusing for our generation, and I think your mom can testify to that. And I don't know why. I think every generation has their thing. I know ours, my generation, when I was younger, it was gay and coming out, and that was the huge controversy then. Um, so even when we were explaining things to our kids, I mean, I always took the standpoint of, look, we don't have to, you don't have to agree, you don't have to understand, you just have to respect it, and because it's not for us, and I don't like when people in politics and all of these things get involved in telling other people what to do and how to live and how they feel. It makes me just as mad when I see a panel of people talking about racism and there's not a black person in sight. It makes me just as crazy when I actually have dove into this pretty deep and done a lot of research just for my own comprehension. And it makes me crazy when there's a panel of people and they're talking about transgender and there isn't a transgender person in there representing, you know, actual people who live it and walk it. And so that makes me a little bit crazy. But so so I'm going to play devil's advocate with some of the things that I'm going to throw at you and just get your response. But I know that um, the fears that are out there from people that I would say are opposed to transgender, they have some fears with this, and with all that's going on in the world and with COVID and terrorism and weather and everything on that, the biggest thing on these people's mind is youth sports, because God knows that's the most important thing, and we got to stop transgender because oh my goodness, there's going to be a female athlete or a male athlete that transgenders to a female, and now they're going to play on the track team and
share a locker room.
Not even share a locker room. I think the parents are worried about, oh my goodness, nobody's going to be able to compete.
Oh, yeah, that too. Goodness,
because parents are nuts.
That petty, goodness.
Yeah, the locker room's in there, but the real issue is competition. So what do you say about youth sports? So I'll give you some stats that I looked up. So and this stat blew me away. 2% of high school students identify as trans. Percent of people that identify, I don't think 2% of them want to be athletes. So maybe even 0.5% of that, beyond that, want to be athletes. And so what's your take on that, being in the trans community?
Okay. So, I mean, you know me, you knew me growing up. I'm not a big sports person. I very much enjoy sitting around and watching other people play sports. I get kind of confused why some sports are separated by gender instead of by like weight class or muscle class or something. I don't know. I'm kind of the opinion that it matters a lot to people who I think the people who care the most about whether or not trans kids are playing in sports wouldn't be playing in the sports anyway. They wouldn't be, you know, the judges, they wouldn't be the referees, they wouldn't be the kids on the court, or, you know, the kids off the court, because they're the parents of the kids on the court who are, you know, upset that their kids are being exposed to different perspectives or, you know, different people than what they're used to. So, I'm not a medical professional. Whether or not a trans kid is taking hormones or whether or not that it impacts their physical performance on the court, I can't speak to that. For lack of better terminology, I think it's kind of stupid. You know, if a kid wants to play a sport, like, why are you going to hold them back? At the end of the day, our culture has kind of put in participation trophies anyways, but at the end of the day, why not let a kid play if it's something that's good for them, that's healthy for them, and, you know, helps them make bonds with other people? You know, like, it's really good to be on a team with other people, so I've heard.
You mean there's more to sports than winning?
Yeah, exactly.
What's wrong with you? Where'd you get that philosophy?
I do have to say, I'm a Lions fan, so I'm used to not winning.
Okay. So you learned not to care a long time ago. One of the other fears that's out there is that people are worried that transgender people are mentally ill. This is a mental illness that needs to be dealt with, and this is really their mantra for pushing their political agenda. You know, is that's it. This is a mental illness, and it's causing people to butcher their bodies, and parents are just going along with this, and they should be protecting their kids from this mental illness. You got any thoughts on that? About your mental illness?
I guess the main thing that I want to say is, if you know, I always get stumped when I think about this because it's definitely like it was a process of thinking about it and realizing that, I'm not comfortable in my body. Like this is like my brain telling me that. Like it is definitely a mental it has a mental like it is definitely a mental it has a mental element to it. But like what is the difference between a transgender person thinking I'm transgender, I don't feel right in my body, and a cisgender person thinking I am cisgender, I feel right in my body? Like if if it makes you mentally ill to be uncomfortable in your body, everyone in middle school would be mentally ill. Puberty is not comfortable for anyone.
And
so,
I'm 40 and I'm still not comfortable in my body,
Yeah.
so
exactly. So
I become mentally ill every time there's a swimming pool around.
exactly.
We're gonna go to the beach.
Nobody's comfortable in swimming pools, in locker rooms, or like there is a lot of social situations in which you know you will be uncomfortable. But I just think that I don't think it's a mental illness. I think it's a mental process of coming to terms with it. So I think it's always different for a trans person when they figured it out. There are, the average lifespan is 80 years. That gives you approximately 80 years to figure out, oh, I don't feel comfortable in my body. I like, or, I feel more aligned with another gender identity. Like, you know, it, it's all up to you whenever like, if you figure out that you're trans. Um, I think that I never really felt comfortable um, being called a girl. I think that like from a very young age, I can remember, going to dance zone with my mom and you know uh, waiting outside the dance hall, rolling around on the hills with all the boys and thinking, this is where I'm supposed to be. I don't want to go play ballet, but that was also probably me not liking ballet. So I think I've always felt uncomfortable, but I didn't really know a term for it until I was right about in middle school. Actually, um, it's when I started to realize, like, yes, everyone is pretty much going or dealing with puberty around me, but this isn't like that's not accurate to how I'm feeling. Like, I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel comfortable learning about female puberty. I don't feel comfortable learning about, you know, like the joys of like giving birth or like getting pregnant. Like that doesn't that's I don't want that. And like there's more to it than that. But like pretty much right around middle school is when I was like, I think I feel more like a boy. I would rather be a boy. I would rather be a man. um and so I started socially transitioning. um and socially transitioning is referring to going by a different name, asking for people to call you with different pronouns or like the pronouns that you're most comfortable with. um Coming out to your friends, your family.
She did say, and I believe that she's right, that your generation is much better at dealing with these types of things than the older generations, including mine. But was that difficult for you?
So I grew up with my mom, and so I'm used to hearing stories of the '80s and how difficult it was for gay people to come
Mm-hmm.
out. So I've always been kind of thankful for being in this generation and thankful for the heightening social awareness of what it means to be trans, what it means to be part of the LGBTQ plus community. Like there are, it's at least like more people are aware that someone could be gay or could be trans than, for example, back in the '80s when it would be shocking to find out that someone's gay because with the AIDS pandemic and all that stuff. Like it was not socially accepted back then. And would like to say that it's more socially accepted now. Um, like we have anti-discrimination laws in place, but that does anti-discrimination laws don't exactly protect you from getting kicked out of your house if your family doesn't approve. Um, but so I think in a lot of ways it was easier than what I was expecting, but in a lot of ways it was still difficult. Um, but so getting back to the story of my journey, I guess. Um, so I came out as trans in 10th grade. I remember that it was 10th grade because I remember walking up to my teachers and saying, hey, can you call me by these pronouns, by this name? All of my friends will call me by this name, so you might as well just start adjusting now before you get too confused. And so...
Of course you did.
Huh?
I said, of course you did. Isn't that would, I would expect nothing less from the product of your mother.
Yeah. So it was pretty much, like it or leave it. Either way, like, I like making friends with school administrators so that if a teacher was having issues with my identity, I'd just be like, okay, well, I'll just go up the ladder. We'll figure this out one way or another, but you're not gonna like the results.
Love it.
But no, I'm very thankful to say that I never had a teacher who had an issue with using the right name for me or the right pronouns for me. And so, yeah, like even into college, all my professors for the most part have been understanding, and it's a lot easier now that I have a deep voice and I get facial hair because it's when people look at me they don't see a transgender person, or they don't see someone, they don't look at me and they go, that person used to be a girl, and so I think that that's important to recognize that I do. The term is called passing, like passing for the gender identity that you aligned with. But I'd like to say that I pass pretty well. I try pretty hard to, look like a cis guy, act like a cis guy. I don't like, I don't, wear dresses or put on makeup or wear nail polish. I almost called it fingernail polish. But so that's a really big part of socially transitioning is presenting as the gender that you want to pass as. So I started socially transitioning in high school. It was pretty easy. Most people called me by the name that I preferred. I didn't tell people what my birth name was because, if they knew it, it was difficult to look at. It was difficult for friends who knew me before I came out because it was like with my mom. You look at this person who you've known for so long as this name, and now they're asking you to call them by a different name. It's a lot different than, for someone who gets married, because you don't call them by their last name, but they still have that name change going on. And so there's that. I started medically transitioning in 2018, pretty much as soon as I got to college. Medically transitioning meaning taking hormone replacement therapy. For trans guys, it is testosterone. For trans girls or trans women, it is estrogen, or they have a few more. But so yeah, I started medically transitioning in 2018. I've been on hormones now for 2.5-ish years. And I mean, you're a part of my family, but my family knows, my family knows, my friends know. There are a lot of different people who approach their gender identity differently. I don't know. I just prefer to go with the flow.
Very cool. So your mom said in her interview, she said some pretty profound things, and I will tell you that I watched a group of panelists that were opposed to transgender, and all of their concerns, aside from some of the typical myths I think that are out there, but all of their concerns really revolved around the parents. Talked to Sue about it. It's a loss, you know, or at least it probably seems that way at first before you realize, because she also said that when you finally started transitioning, that it became crystal clear. She's like, "Oh, that's my child right there," and she said that, and I'm like, I couldn't agree more.
What a gain that is to have
Yeah,
your whole child.
exactly. So, but she talked about her struggles.
I think so, yeah. Like, putting it simply, I think that they're, I like, I love my mom. Like, not everyone gets along well with their mom. Not everyone has a healthy relationship with their mom. But I care about my parents. I part of coming out was difficult because I knew that I would be changing in their eyes, and in order for them to kind of help reaffirm my identity, it was losing their little girl, but getting a little son. I think that it should be acknowledged that parents are going to struggle with this. Parents are going to have a more difficult time than other people will, because you know you get the ultrasounds, you get the for more modern things, you get the gender reveal party. It's a key memory that you can't really replace. So in a lot of ways, I can understand why parents would go through the grieving process, because it kind of rocks your world.
People are coming out to their parents that there are times when it does not go well. She talked about what a great resource you are for your friends and helping them in that community. But yeah, she was saying that more often than not, it doesn't go well. So what are some of for now in your case, according to your mom? I guess I'll let you answer, but in your case, it sounds like it went pretty well. That your mom was very supportive from the beginning, and so you didn't have to face some of that. So you kind of took that burden on for some of your friends or people in the community. How devastating is that for them? How much? I mean, and I don't want you to tell me specifics about other people, but does it get better for them? Does it stay awful? I heard about some of your mom losing friends because she decided to support uh, you deciding to be who you really are. Tell us a little bit about your advocacy for your friends in that capacity.
So, being honest, there's not a whole lot that I can do in terms of getting my friends resources that can help them survive if they get kicked out by their parents. Um,
Is that common? Do you
I
see a
have
lot of them getting kicked out?
it's from the people that I've talked to, it's not as common for them to get kicked out as it is for them to either have to play it off as a joke, um, or say, no, I changed my mind, this isn't something that I actually want, or they just bring it up once and then never bring it up again until they're out of the house. Um, you know, so I know a lot of people who have said, like, yeah, I came out to my parents and they didn't say anything, so we just never talked about it again. Um, and that doesn't help when it comes to like socially transitioning, because if they can't come out to their parents, oftentimes they don't feel safe enough to come out to the rest of their family. And it's hard because these are people that they either love or respect, and it's like a core part of your identity that you pretty much have to reject to be included in your family. And granted, there are times where they come out knowing fully well that their parents aren't going to accept them, that their family's not going to accept them. This is coming specifically from being involved in my gender inclusive hall when I first came to college, and still being a resident assistant throughout college. But most of the times my friends are asking me questions like, how can I start medically transitioning without telling my parents? When it comes to medically transitioning, you start to look to other trans people around you, because we don't have the same amount of resources. That it's like the difference between trying to look up like a surgery about, I don't know, gastric bypass versus like top surgery for female to male people, or like bottom surgery. Like I know it's really really simple, but top surgery referring to the upper half of the body, and bottom surgery referring to the lower half. But I just want to make sure that I'm defining everything in case anyone's confused about the words that I'm saying. And honestly, I think that's why the suicide attempt / suicide completion rate is so high for trans people.
So, what would you say to parents that have kids that are transitioning and coming out? What is one of the best ways for them to handle it? What is one of the best things that they can do and walk with their child, even if they're in opposition?
I think it's important to say, if you're a parent and you're trying to talk to your kid about this, don't be afraid to try and research things beforehand. If it starts out with something as simple as trans help, trans resources, like trying to empathize with someone by looking for the same resources that they're looking for, like if if your kid is comfortable with talking to you, they'll come to you on their own. And it's never like, you can't really prepare yourself for that conversation. So it's either have the awkward sit down conversation, or wait for your kid to come to you and then get shell shocked even if you were preparing for it in the first place. And I guess last but not least, this is still your kid, and I know that that's just a given. But I think starting off a conversation with, I'm not going to love you any differently. You're still my kid. Whoever you are, at the end of the day, know that you're safe with me having this conversation. Even if I don't understand, even if I don't necessarily agree, I still love you. For parents, you can't really control what your kid does. You can always try and say like, hey, you should be a doctor. If they turn out to be a ballerina, then that's what they picked at the end of the day. But being trans or being gay or being anywhere in the LGBTQ community is that's something that they're going to figure out on their own. And hopefully if they know that if they know that you love them, they'll be able to share that journey with you too.
Is that something that you feel obligated to disclose? Do you feel something that you're not obligated to disclose? I mean, I don't know. I don't have an opinion either way. I don't have a clue. So,
so I think it depends on how far into the relationship you are. Sorry, I'm like trying to fight back another yawn. But if you're just talking to someone, and if you're in the talking stage, so to speak, I don't think that it's necessary to disclose that you are trans. But if you're starting to get into the more intimate parts of a relationship, or if you start dating someone and it's been like 3 or 6 months or something, I think that to I think it's important to bring up, like, I think it'd be just as important as, you know, like saying, like, for example, like, I have an issue with, like, I don't like when people, like, touch my stomach, or I don't like when people touch my shoulders. Like, it's just like another part of the relationship that you should be communicating with your partner. Um, I think that, communication is important. It's kind of like how relationships work. What I'm trying to say is, I think it's important. I think that trans people have a moral obligation to share that with their partner, but I don't think that it should be an obligation if they are only talking to someone, or if they've only been dating for like a few weeks.
So I'll throw the $1,000,000 question at you, which is always the title of this episode is "What I Wish You Knew About Being Trans," and I'll throw that on you. What do you wish people knew about being transgender that they probably don't already know?
It's really hard to find resources, and I think that's part of what makes this journey so difficult.
Hmm.
Um, and I guess trying to find something else that people don't know, but I wish they did know, is I've said it since the beginning of the video. I don't do this for attention. I do it to feel more comfortable with myself. And if it seems to you like I'm seeking attention, I think you have to reassess how you're looking at it, because that's not the right perspective to have. I am not looking for your attention. I am trying to help myself.
It sounds like you're striving for the opposite. Like you don't want the attention. You want to blend in. You want to be comfortable in your own shoes. You don't. So yeah, the
Yes.
people are seeking attention argument doesn't doesn't add up to me. Um, okay, you know that thing that you said about not having the resources that hopefully will resonate because it's a very comparable thing that we go through with being white family raising a black child, and that we know that Paisley is going to struggle because she, like you said, she's going to go through uh, she's going to experience racism. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. And when she does, she's got to come back, and nobody's going to relate to her, at least within our family. So we have to try to make sure, and we prepare for it, and we try to make sure to give her the resources outside the family so that she is able to have someone to go to. So that's a really good point in that I think that might be something that is a little enlightening to people when you put it that way, that yeah, you don't have the resources, and typically people aren't going through this, and you don't have anyone to go to. That's I can see that being very isolating, and that's something that adoptive families struggle
I
with.
can
So
think of one more thing.
yeah.
Um, I just wanted to say really quick, I am more than happy to answer questions. I don't know if that goes the same for other trans people, but I am I'm so used to fielding questions where someone starts it off with, "I don't know how to say this without being offensive," but and like I am completely okay with answering any kind of question, because I know that that's helping you understand what I'm going through better, and that helps me help myself in the future. Because if a person is like, "I don't understand why you're asking for these pronouns," or "I don't understand why you're doing this," I like being able to educate others, because then they can say, "Oh, I know why you're doing this, and I'm going to try and support you," or "I don't know why you're doing this, I didn't really understand, but I'm here for you anyway." Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask them if they're comfortable first, but don't be afraid to ask them questions, because more likely than not, they want to help you understand so that you can help them.
Yeah, so I'll close with thank you for doing this. I think it's very beneficial. It helps, old people like me try to grasp concepts that we're not familiar with, and rather than just be afraid of the unknown, I'm just going to try to figure out and get some understanding, and hopefully by doing these types of interviews, we'll start sharing some of that understanding with other people, and then hopefully that will lead to some acceptance and people not being so scared of of transgenders and the big unknown, and there would be more willingness to adopt and foster. And especially if I can't think of anything more horrible than fostering or adopting and then finding out after that takes place that someone is transgender, and all of a sudden you're one of these people that shuns them. I mean, that nothing more tragic, I think, in the adoption and foster world than if that happens. So I really thank you for your time.